Hello and welcome to the Capitol Report on NTD Television. I'm Steve Lance. More oil released from the nation's strategic reserves. How President Biden defends his move and what Republicans are warning about. NTD's Iris Tao brings us more from the White House.
President Biden is releasing another 50 million barrels of oil from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. The president says the move will tame gas prices and he pins the current high costs on Russia. Here's what he says.
With my announcement today, we're going to continue to stabilize markets and decrease the prices at a time when the actions of other countries have caused such volatility.
It's the last part of the release authorized in March, and Biden announced that the timing is planned for December. So far, the administration has released roughly 165 million barrels of oil from the reserve. And adding what's in today's announcement, Biden will have withdrawn over 180 million barrels. That's the largest ever release from the emergency oil reserve, which is now as a result at a 40-year low.
By selling from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve at the higher price of $90 earlier this year and then refilling it in the future at a lower price, around $70, will actually make money for the taxpayers.
The move also comes as midterms are just now 19 days away. Recent polls have shown Republicans gaining support as more Americans put the economy as their top concern. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi admits in an interview published today that Democrats will have to message inflation better in the next 3 weeks ahead. And Republicans are zeroing in on Biden's economic policies. The Republican Energy and Commerce Committee said in a statement today that Biden is depleting our Strategic Petroleum Reserve, further surrendering both our energy security and national security to countries like Russia and China. That's as Congressman Chris Stewart accuses Biden of trying short-term fix to buy votes ahead of the midterms. And here's Biden's response when questioned if today's move is politically motivated.
Look, it makes sense. I've been doing this for how long now? It's not politically motivated at all.
And Biden added has instructed his team to look into further releases from the reserve if needed. Reporting in Washington, D.C., Iris Tao, NTD News.
The IRS will let Americans keep more of their income next year due to inflation. Since tax rates are automatically adjusted for inflation, there will be higher cutoffs for all 7 income tax brackets and a higher standard deduction when you file your tax return. For example, the income thresholds for the top tax rate, 37%, are going up 7% from this year. And the standard deduction, the baseline income people can claim tax-free, will see the largest increase since 1985. The standard deduction for married couples will rise by $1,800. For individuals, it's a $900 increase. Closing in on midterms, Florida is cracking down on voter fraud. The Tampa Police Department released a new video of police arresting a convicted felon for allegedly voting illegally in the 2020 election.
Ma'am, we have a warrant for your arrest. For what? For voter fraud.
Good, how are you, sir?
Right?
All right. So I know you're caught off guard, but unfortunately that's how this stuff works, okay?
The woman, Ramona Oliver, says she did not know that she was breaking any law. She had served 20 years in state prison for second-degree murder. Oliver says she thought she was eligible to vote. Her attorney says a person registering voters approached her at a bus stop one day and had her fill out a form. Oliver later received a voter registration card in the mail. Oliver pleaded not guilty and has a trial set for December. This is one of the first arrests by Governor Ron DeSantis' newly formed Florida Office of Election Crimes and Security. But here in Washington, D.C., non-citizens could soon be given voting rights. The D.C. Council voted to allow residents without U.S. citizenship to vote in local elections. The act allows non-citizen residents, including illegal immigrants, to participate in local elections, but not federal ones. The only requirements are that the voter must be at least 18 years old and have lived in D.C. for at least 30 days. The bill will go to Mayor Muriel Bowser for signature and then for a congressional review. If it does pass, it would join other bills in the D.C. area that give non-citizens the right to vote. D.C. is estimated to have about 51,000 non-citizen residents. With the burden of illegal immigration resting on local governments, Arizona's governor used $6 million in state funds to fill in gaps along their border with Mexico. Now the White House is ordering Governor Ducey to reopen them. But the Biden administration previously authorized 2 contracts for U.S. Customs and Border Protection to close gaps in Arizona's border wall. NTD's Melina Wisecup is reporting from Yuma, Arizona, along the border.
More than 100 of these shipping containers are acting as a makeshift border wall between the U.S. and Mexico. And we're told that they do play an important role in helping to ease some of the burden on the Border Patrol agents, because the illegal immigrants then coming over from Mexico are funneled in specific areas where Border Patrol can then focus on. But the Biden administration is now asking Arizona's governor to remove the shipping containers, saying that they're placed in unauthorized locations and that it's a violation of federal law. The administration also argues that this could inhibit the further construction of the actual border wall. But Arizona's governor is pushing back and bucking Washington, saying that he just can't trust the administration to take this issue seriously moving forward after a year and a half of inaction.
As this is the Morelos Dam, and people used to arrive by bus on a daily basis every single morning, and we would get 200 to 300 here every day because they could just walk straight in and then walk across.
So the gotaways average 3,000 a week, and now they're down to about 1,000 after the shipping containers. It gives Border Patrol the operational advantage. They don't have complete control, but they have the advantage. Because every time they make a move, then there's a counter move by the cartels and the people that are trafficking these large groups of people. But yeah, while they're busy with all of these people, then they start pushing more narcotics through the unoccupied areas of the desert.
The global threat the CCP poses to the world continues to mount. A new report by the Heritage Foundation raising concerns over a receding U.S. military while China making gains. To assess the situation, we had a chance to speak with retired Marine Corps Lieutenant Colonel Dakota Wood. Here's a look. Dakota Wood, thank you so much for joining us.
What a real pleasure. Thanks for having me on. Looking forward to the conversation.
Dakota, the report released by the Heritage Foundation raising concerns about China's growing military. Just how serious do you think this is?
Well, numerically, it's very concerning. I mean, just as an example, we've got fewer than 300 ships in the U.S. Navy. Of those are 100 at sea on any day. Of that 100, about 60 are in the Western Pacific. The Chinese Navy alone is 360 ships. So just in numbers, I mean, even if our ships are far better than theirs, it's still a 6-to-1 disadvantage. They're operating within 100 miles or so of their coastline. Our guys and gals are 6,000 miles from home. So they've got a lot of land-based resources they can bring to a naval fight. We don't have similar sorts of capabilities. So it's one example of how time and distance and numbers really matter when it comes to forces opposing each other in combat.
Dakota, I want to ask you about this term that we often hear nowadays in reference to the CCP, and it's called hybrid warfare. If you could tell us, what is hybrid war, and has the CCP been conducting hybrid warfare?
Absolutely. You know, there are critics of that term that say, look, all warfare is hybrid war. You've got a propaganda component. You've got attacks on resources and communications and influence campaigns. And that stuff, it just features across time. But what it means when we're using it in this context is you can envision military forces going against each other, as we are seeing in Ukraine with Russia's invasion or assault on Ukraine, conventional warfare. Today, though, can you use satellite systems, to blind or dazzle? Can you feed bad information into their command and control networks so they don't get a clear picture? Cyber intrusions, not necessarily maybe turning something off, which you could do, but can you manipulate things in a way? Corrupt information. There is a global influence campaign that goes on. You can use trade relationships and the promise of access to your market, as China does. With a billion-person market, it's very attractive for companies in Europe and the Middle East and Asia to want to do business deals with China. So when they harness all of those aspects in this greater global competition with the United States, it's a hybridization. It's bringing together lots of different pieces. And I just don't think we're as effective in that as the Chinese seem to be.
When it comes to many of the things that you mentioned, one thing is the global influence, CCP's subversion of our society, which some might argue is the most effective. How do you stop this ideology, which is at the core of everything they do?
Yeah, exactly. And it's a lack of seriousness, I think, on the American part. So if you're going to have a Chinese engineering student working on very advanced technologies, is that Chinese student going to stay here in the United States, to do things that are good for our market and economy and, academic advancements and those sorts of things? Or does he go back home and better enable China to compete with us, where we have spent all the money on research and development, and yet they're getting the benefit? Are they porting that information and intellectual property and back to China? So there is a huge component in American academia, in our university systems, in our research labs, and even in our business community that just doesn't believe that China poses some kind of existential threat, that this is a bunch of fear-mongering, that the risk really isn't something to be concerned about, or if it is, that it's years and years down the road, and in the meantime, we can be making a lot of profit or making advances. So I think on our side, these influence campaigns, the penetration of our markets, with Chinese companies, and especially on the technology side, you're really running a risk of giving away important information and making their economy and their technology sector much more capable than it otherwise would be.
Dakota Wood, really appreciate your perspective.
Great pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for watching the Capitol Report. If you want to see our full broadcast, check us out at epochtv.com.